Hi everyone, this is Kevin Annett. It's Christmas Eve in the sad year of 2020, but also hopeful year as we enter a new one with new possibilities always. But at this Christmas Eve, I want to share with you a reflection straight from my heart to yours. It's entitled, A Ghost of Our Christmas Past, Present, and Future, What Maisie Reveals. And I start with a quote from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, when he writes, "This boy is ignorance and this girl is want. Beware them both and all of their degree, but most of all beware this boy ignorance. For on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased." Well, every Yuletide for the past 25 years, I think especially long on a little girl called Maisie Shaw, and I offer whatever can pass as prayers for her. Maisie would have been 85 years old by now. Instead, she was murdered on Christmas Eve when still a little child. A United Church clergyman named Alfred Caldwell kicked her to her death on a cold basement stairwell as Christmas carols were being sung upstairs in the chapel. And Maisie was crying for her mother when she died. Well, yet another death in the slaughterhouse known as the Alberni Indian Residential School was hardly unusual. But Maisie's fate was different. Her bones did not stay secretly buried like the others did. Maisie Shaw's slain has been the unforeseen mustard seed that has grown and spread and changed me and our nation forever. Ever since I learned of the crime from the one who witnessed it, and I spoke of it to the world. But doing so has caused me to share Maisie's fate. For I too had my life snuffed out violently by the same men who caused and concealed her murder. But, like her, I have risen from the grave with more than a story to share with the fearful Scrooge unable to face himself, otherwise known as Canada. As the strange year of 2020 ends, it may seem that our world is caught up in a mass hysteria that just fell on us from out of nowhere. In fact, the COVID police state is nothing new. Our society has now become a single enormous Indian residential school. The trauma many of us experience every day is like what happened to the children on the day of their arrival at those internment camps. We too were being assaulted, terrorized, and stripped of freedom after being kidnapped from all that we knew. We too are facing arbitrary regimentation, mandatory vaccinations, and dehumanizing regulations, and imprisonment, and even random killings. In other words, and in accordance with the natural law of return, our own crimes are blowing back on us. The hell we created to grab this land is now turning to consume us. And like Maisie Shaw and many like her, most of us are too frightened to resist the Moloch state, even when our obedience to that state only worsens our captivity and hastens our end. Well, the woman who witnessed the murder of Maisie Shaw, Harriet Nahani, once told me, "Only two kinds of people survived residential school, slaves and sellouts." Well, I remember when she told me that I was troubled that she didn't list a third category, namely the people who resisted. But Harriet was right. Nobody survives a death camp intact. Those who will not surrender to their oppressors are the first ones to die and be forgotten, and the survivors write the history that's approved by the killers. That is why the dead are the only reliable witnesses to what happened, and can touch and change the hearts of all of us who are caught in our Scrooge-like complicity and fear. Well, all during my disastrous years, as my livelihood and children and future were all stripped from me mercilessly, I always read Charles Dickens' Christmas carols aloud to my two daughters during the brief time we had together, as Yuletide and thoughts of Maisie Shaw returned. I remember their anxious looks and their own tears whenever I broke down, especially when I was reading the part where Scrooge was changed. Something in my own crippled heart shared his rebirth when his life was thrown open to the wondrous humanity through which he had been stumbling so blind. I always cried then for the loss and death I had suffered and for the seemingly unconquerable corruption and criminality of official Canadian society. But my tears also sprang from an undying hope in the possibility that all of that could change. and that it was up to me to help change it. Well, in keeping with my life, I've acted from that same worn hope throughout this past year of 2020, as our homegrown Moloch has stretched out his claws to claim our lives as well. And yet almost everywhere that hope has been dashed. In a banal replay of my campaigns over the past quarter century, sworn friends and fighters have fallen away in fear as months-long labor to establish sovereign republic assemblies has been destroyed in a day by lies, sabotage, and betrayal. And yet something of what I've sown in such good faith has miraculously endured, like the whisper of a dead girl's story amidst a cacophony of official lies. The same miracle occurred years ago when even the killing of our eyewitnesses to the Canadian genocide and even a massive church-state cover-up did not stop the criminal conviction of Christian Canada and its accomplices in Rome and London, nor did it stop the bringing into being the necessity of the Republic of Canada. The best part of us always survives catastrophe, but only because it's unseen and is not owned by this world, like an unsuspected spirit that appears unnoticed to expel a possessing entity from its human hosts. Well, over the years, my work seems to have been like a collective exorcism of this blood-soaked entity that's eating my people alive. This entity has dulled their hearts and ruled their thoughts for generations and compelled them to commit or fund or tolerate unspeakable crimes against the innocent. All so that this entity can feed off the agony and destruction of their own souls and the suffering of their little victims. Naming this entity has in some miraculous way lessened its hold on us. But as Jesus himself observed, some evil spirits can only be expelled by the hand of God. Whenever I speak of Maisie Shaw and the church and the culture that caused her slaughter, most Canadians still turn away in denial, or they spout the officially benign line of what happened and how. In their response, I see nothing other than parts of a group mind rallying against a threat to itself. That mind doesn't allow its trapped individuals to see its bestiality for what it is and to break from it in disgust and horror as we should and must do. Well, my street buddy Frank Erminskin knows exactly what I'm talking about. I checked in with him the other day at his perch on Hastings Street, where he survives by dealing cigarettes and other stuff to other homeless Indians. Frank took one look at me and remarked how surprised and happy he was that I was still alive. And then he asked me, "You still occupying churches, Kev?" When I told him I'd sure like to again, Frank grimaced and replied, "What the fuck for, man? They're just the walking dead." Well, exorcisms don't work when there's nothing left to revive. All we can do is conduct a funeral service for the entity and the host alike. In this case, for what is called Canada and the global corporatocracy and dictatorship it now represents. Ultimately, that's what I've been doing for a quarter century, conducting that kind of funeral service. As I made my lonely progress through this land of no one, after being shaken from death by a little girl named Maisie Shaw, who died at our hands, but who's more alive now than many who claim to be. Another innocent, who was murdered, advised us to leave the dead to bury their dead, and to go with him and others like him to a new reality. Well, these days I feel some of that eternal realm come alive in me and around me whenever I remember Maisie Shaw and all that she has given me and how she's overturned our world. Tonight and always may your hidden heart be transformed by such forgotten ghosts as this year dies, so that the new world may overcome death and come into being among us, even among us. Or as Charles Dickens summed up so well, "I will live in the past and the present and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach." God bless us, everyone. God bless all of us. Carry through the struggle and the remembrance and the eternal light. This is Kevin Annett, Eagle Strong Voice. MurderByDecree.com, republicofcanada.ca. Carry it on.